Right, Paul, I'm going to open up with something slightly dramatic. I generally think we're witnessing, with AI, what could be the most disruptive technological force of our lifetime. Bigger than COVID, bigger than the smartphone revolution, and possibly even bigger than the internet itself.
Wow, that's a big claim, Sean. Bigger than the internet?
I know, it might sound like a big claim, but here's the difference. Every major revolution before this one changed how humans worked. The Industrial Revolution gave us machines to multiply our physical power. The computer revolution multiplied our ability to process information, and the internet connected the entire planet together. But AI is different because for the first time, we're creating tools that can replicate parts of human thinking itself. We know it can write, analyze, design, code, reason through problems, and even improve the way systems operate. And crucially, it can do this at a scale and speed no human team ever could before. That means AI isn't just another productivity tool, it's a force multiplier for intelligence. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today, Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Hello and welcome back to Ctrl Alt Dev. I'm Sean, and alongside me is the ever delightful Paul, who I should point out is sporting a brand new haircut. Sadly, you can't see him through your speakers, but let's just say he's gone short. He's gone very short. Today is a bit of a milestone for the show. It's the first episode of March 2026, which makes this episode officially number 19. We launched this podcast on the 11th of July 2025, so that's 9 months ago. In that relatively short period, the technological landscape, particularly around AI, has shifted at an incredible pace. So today, we're going to take a step back and look at just how dramatically things have changed since we started this journey.
And I do remember your WhatsApp saying, do I have any hair left to cut? So thank you for that. Yeah, so looking back at where we started, yeah, it definitely feels like we launched in a completely different era of technology. The goal today isn't just to do a recap of what we've talked about. It's really about connecting those dots. It's easy to get lost, I think, in the weekly noise. But when you zoom out over the last 18 episodes, the sheer velocity, I think, of everything we've covered, it just shows a fundamental rewiring of how businesses are operating today.
Absolutely. And before we jump into our time machine, how's your week been, Paul? Are you still managing to balance the vision, the chaos, and getting shit done, like we promised our listeners on day one?
Busy fool. I'm on here talking about AI, and then I just feel like most overwhelmed I've ever been. I think it's a constant founder struggle, isn't it? We've had probably the most challenging quarter I've ever had in business. And then at the same time, we're on for our best quarter we've ever had in business. It just swings and roundabouts, isn't it? So I spent a lot of the week, auditing our own internal systems with the team at Green Gorilla. We talk a lot on this show about ensuring that we're building systems that complement, rather than fight AI. And practically applying that across our legacy architecture is a serious challenge. So how about you?
Totally similar. I mean, we can see shifts of where our work's coming from, and things are definitely changing with this AI landscape. We've been deep in architectural scaffolding and refactoring and just doing obviously what we need to do to get this next version of our software out. But it's fascinating because we are front row witnesses to this transition. So we're using AI daily for documentation and testing, and it's essential now to kind of boost our productivity. And I'm not sure how on earth we did it without AI before. Yeah. But the side effects is that the goalposts of what good looks like for our development teams are moving every single week.
Yeah, and that brings us perfectly to this week's listener's question. And we've chosen one that really looks between the lines of this shift. So Sarah contacted us. She's a tech lead at a mid-sized SaaS company. She's asked for the company not to be named, so I won't do a plug for the company. And she wrote that over the last 9 months, my role has shifted from managing code and developers to managing AI workflows. So with the tools on the market, remembering context and agentic AI taking action, how on earth do we audit a system that's constantly rewriting itself?
Yeah, it's a brilliant question, and it perfectly highlights the transition we've seen since we started this in episode 1. We aren't just deploying static algorithms anymore. When you introduce an AI browser like Atlas with built-in memory or autonomous agents, you're dealing with a dynamic black box. The short answer is traditional software auditing is dead.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just run a unit test on an AI that learns from conversational context. Like, the value is moving entirely into where AI struggles. So it's human judgment, it's complex problem solving and integration work. So for Sarah, her job actually isn't auditing the code anymore. She has to audit the boundaries and the outcomes. She has to build the guardrails around what the AI is allowed to touch rather than how it thinks. So it's really letting go of the doing part and being responsible for the quality control, isn't it? And the output at the end of the day.
You're right. It's moving into an era of probabilistic software. It's no longer just about writing rigid deterministic code that behaves exactly the same every time. Now you're working with systems that generate outcomes based on probability. So the real skill set is shifting. Developers and businesses alike need to start thinking about orchestration, system design, and of course, prompt engineering. How you'll guide and control these intelligent systems rather than simply programming them line by line. So the winners won't just be the companies that are using AI, they'll be the ones who know how to manage it, control it, and deploy it responsibly at scale. And we've been going on about this in every single episode, haven't we, Paul?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, Sarah, thank you for contacting us via LinkedIn. That was really appreciated. So if any listener out there wants to get in touch with us, you can find us on LinkedIn. I'm Paul Rhodes and this is Sean Sale. Just send us a message and we'll happily do some research and come back to you on the podcast. And that question from Sarah, I think, tees up our main topic perfectly, Sean. You know, if our plan is to look back to our launch episode in July 2025 and our subsequent chats on, the AI brain, agentic AI in episodes 4 and 6. We were largely discussing AI as an incredibly smart assistant. It was a tool that you kind of visited, you gave a prompt to and you waited for an answer.
It really was, but the real paradigm shift we've been seeing over the last 9 months is the move from AI as a tool to what I'd call AI as an ambient layer. Now, what do I mean by an ambient layer? Well, that up until recently, most of us interacted with AI like a tool. You opened it when you needed it, a bit like opening Excel or Google. You asked it a question, you got an answer, and maybe you generated some text or analyzed something, and then you closed it again. But what's happening now is very different. AI is no longer something you go to. It's becoming something that sits quietly in the background across your entire digital environment. It's embedded in your email, your CRM, your financial systems, your development tools, your customer support, even your operating systems. So instead of just responding to prompts, these systems are starting to observe, interpret, and act with the workflows that businesses already run. And that's the real shift. The change isn't simply that chat models have become smarter, it's that we're now seeing autonomous AI systems that can book meetings, trigger workflows, write and deploy code, analyze customer behavior, or even make purchasing decisions based on predefined rules. So in simple terms, Paul, we've crossed the threshold. We've moved from AI that answers questions to AI that can take actions on our behalf. And once that starts happening at scale, the way businesses operate begin to change quite dramatically.
Yeah, and I think we don't get a lot right, do we, Sean? But I think the thing that we've been saying throughout this is we could definitely see and predict this shift to agentic AI, as it's called, and to the point now where you've got, I think we were saying we foresaw a picture of like definitely by the end of this year that you're going to have the average SME should be having hundreds of agents running all their back end admin. That's something we've talked about at length. And it's not for just the tech leaders, it's not for Silicon Valley. This is for like any business in the world can tap into this accessible architecture. And it's not hard. This is the thing. It's so accessible. So then liability becomes a question then. So if you have hundreds of agents running across your entire infrastructure, there's a huge trust gap that we've talked about as well. So, if I have an AI agent that executes a purchasing workflow that bankrupts a department, or a browser like we spoke about, like Atlas, gets hit with like a prompt injection attack, and we know it's socially engineered. So who's legally responsible? The tech is moving exponentially so fast. We've talked about regulation. It's like a committee meeting. It can't keep up.
Well, exactly. I mean, and we've discussed it, like you said, at great length. I remember when I was in the recruitment industry, back when I was just writing software for Voyager software. We built fairly simple keyword matching tools to scan CVs. It was basic automation, really. The system would just check for certain keywords like when we're writing code, Paul, Visual Basic, C++, C Sharp, and ranking us based on those keywords and helping recruiters narrow down the pile. Now we've got AI, almost like we said in the previous podcast, doing everything.
Yeah.
And the final interview, it's the final interview that the human being gets involved with. But the pre-interviews could be 1, 2, 3, or 4, could all be done by AI. But, you fast forward today and the landscape has changed dramatically, as we said. Nearly 70% of employers are planning to use AI in their recruitment process. And the slightly unsettling part is that many intend to do this without little human oversight. In some cases, candidates may never actually, like we just said, speak to a person during the early stage of the hiring process. They're simply filtered out by algorithms. And it goes much further than that, just scanning CVs now. AI systems can analyse written responses, assess aptitude tests, evaluate communication skills during recorded video interviews, and even look at behavioural patterns, things like the tone of voice, the confidence levels, how you actually portray yourself on a video, or how someone structures their answers. So what you're starting to see is a multi-layered recruitment funnel where AI handles the first 3 or 4 stages automatically. Yes, it might shortlist candidates, run screening interviews, score their responses and rank them against the job criteria. But by the time a human recruiter gets involved, they may only be speaking to the final 2 or 3 candidates out of hundreds. So in other words, Paul, the 5 layers of the hiring process could be entirely AI driven, with the human interaction only happening right at the end. And why wouldn't you do this when this is what recruiters would say is a large, painful part of their process?
Yeah, I think I can't remember the episode. Forgive me, listeners, but you talked about bias comes into it, though, doesn't it? And we had a whole conversation around actually AI LLMs are built on knowledge that is fundamentally biased. And the other thing is, I love the phrase "they're planning to." It's like it's so accessible, it's so ready now. And I'm not saying automate today your entire recruitment process, but for goodness sake, automate one part of it. Do you know what I mean? Just start with one bottleneck. It's just interesting, isn't it? I'm working with a few companies right now, and they're hiring, and we're bringing AI into their process, and it's working wonders. And like you say, one of the biggest challenges to hiring people is sifting through the abundance of applicants. And it's like, how do you filter? You don't want to talk to 600 people. You want to talk to 6, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think we touched on bias and we touched on liability, and I think the data shows us exactly why, it can be dangerous. So I think we discussed in a previous episode, like the University of Washington study, where they found about AI hiring tools favored white sounding names 85% of the time, black sounding names only 9% of the time. These systems aren't deliberately racist. They're just mirroring this historical data that they're feeding on. But because companies deploy it at scale, it acts as like a turbocharge for bias, which is just, it's literally discrimination at machine speed. So even though we've talked about filtering, the fairness of it and the approach it takes, it's speed versus discrimination. And that's a really ethical line to cross as well. So that's why I was saying we're helping companies like automate their recruitment process. But with this knowledge, that's the biggest thing. So once you understand its weaknesses, you can then obviously do things to counter it. And I think that's the thing, is you have to understand when you work with any AI, we've talked about hallucination, all this sort of stuff. You need to understand the benefit to it, but also the weaknesses of it. And it does have weaknesses. They're well documented. And I think when you build your own guardrails around anything, you can maximize, like really multiply, like you talked about the output of it. So
yeah, well, you remember the psychological study we did on that one episode where we talked. Well, I think it was experienced recruiters were literally following AI, almost like the Pied Piper, than relying on the human's recommendations. So, it's the distrust of the machine consciously, but deferring it to an authority in practice. I mean, that is a lethal combination. Yeah. We're automating decades of discrimination because humans are too overwhelmed by volume to challenge the algorithm. So they were trusting the AI.
Yeah, and we're seeing a similar loss of control in how people are using the internet now. So when we started this podcast, the internet browser, whatever you use, Chrome, I don't know the others. The browser was
Edge.
a passive window, wasn't it? It was like you go to your browser and you ask it questions. But then when during the last 9 months, OpenAI launched ChatGPT Atlas, the browser that's an AI workplace that remembers context and performs tasks for you, completely changed the game, completely shifts the value chain of the web. Because as we saw, it's already been hacked via hidden natural language commands embedded in URLs. Obviously, they've patched it since, but there's still AI hackers, effectively, who are trying to hack the AI browsers. So you've got this really, that's an interesting thing we haven't ever touched on is, are hackers still writing code? Because developers aren't writing code anymore. Well, they shouldn't be. So therefore, is your hacker using sophisticated AI tooling to effectively hack LLMs and everything else on browsers? So, if we talk about all these opportunities with operations at scale, it's a scary thought to think of the dark side of the internet and what those individuals are doing at scale because of the same tools that are available.
Once the systems are embedded across your workflows, I suppose that's where the real security becomes managing the data they consume and the decisions they're allowed to make. And if we step back and look at the last 9 months, as we said on this podcast, the shift has been remarkable because we started out simply experimenting with a novel chat interface, asking it questions like we said. But the real security challenge is what's going on now. It's very quickly we moved into what I call an era of workflow inversion. Traditionally, developers built software piece by piece, writing every function, every line of logic, as we discussed. But
proudly,
proudly.
We were problem solvers.
Absolutely, yeah. But now the model is changing. Instead of building everything from scratch, and it's exactly right what you just said there. Actually, problem solvers. And I'd probably come and ask you a question. You try and solve it for me, Paul. And now we've got this tool now that can take on that responsibility.
I remember you talk about fag breaks. No more fag breaks.
Yeah,
or no more getting outside the office block and talk.
I don't smoke anymore.
Well,
Kelly, anyway, I don't smoke. But it's true. It's like the communication side of how I could help you and you could help me has kind of gone. So you've got another orchestra that you can go to ask for support and help, coordinating these massive AI systems, guiding them, constraining them, and shaping how we work together. So the job isn't, like we said, coding anymore. It's about the unpredictable AI systems and making sure they operate safely, reliably, in a way that actually delivers value to the business, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've just made me think of this image that I talk to people about is that, and it's an interesting one you say about communication because you can decide what the role is, but I always think of it as like having this senior developer on your shoulder. So for my developers, I talk about, if you've got 10 developers, you've almost got the ability to have 20 overnight, because if you put the right tools in place, you can have a senior developer sat on every person's shoulder that literally they can turn around and ask a question to, and they can query. And that's what people are doing with Claude, is literally it knows all the knowledge, code base, everything. And they're saying, why is it doing this? What's the implications if I do this, blah, blah, blah. And the analogy works at any role. So we're doing a lot at the moment with a CFO, virtual CFO gem that we're building. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the last month, is I've sat there for a period of time. I've put my little CFO on my shoulder and I've asked it some basic questions that I'm an idiot when it comes to business finance. But it's given me some really insightful things to go to Zero, to go and pull off certain reports. I don't even know what.
I don't think you're an idiot. I think it's because you and I are entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Sean. I will take that compliment.
Yeah, but we're not, are we? I mean, most of us, like you say, we write code because we enjoy it, and we're creating we're building solutions for problems that have come to us. So the financial side of a business, in a way, that's another skill that we need to learn. But as you rightly say, AI can help us with that.
Yeah. And there's so much to it, isn't there? Like, okay, there's business finance in terms of, do you have cash in the bank? But then there's business finance, and there's a reason that CFOs exist, and that it's a critical role in any scaling business. But for a small business like mine, I'm not even at the point where I would employ a fractional CFO. Do you know what I mean? So this is like the hybrid. I'm not saying you wouldn't go to an expert. I just mean it's a resource that I never tapped into before. And so then I can have an honest conversation. It can say, go and pull this report off Zero and then feed it in. I'm happy to because of my privacy settings. But at the end of the day, it's public data. And then it says, right, you've got this cash, you're going to run out of cash in this many days. So a figure I never knew before. And then suddenly you realize every business has a day they're going to run out of cash.
Absolutely.
So it was like, it's quite a it was about 4 a.m. in the morning when I couldn't sleep because I had no money. So that's why I did that. Oh, that was last night. No, I'm only joking. So that's brilliant look back. I think one of our intentions today is keep this as short as we can. So let's get straight into the sci-fi question in this week's news. Is rewriting itself happening yet?
Well, that's what people are asking. Are we entering the phase where AI improves itself without direct human input? We've heard lots of different stories, but I think the most poignant one for me, or the tipping point in software development, is the Spotify CEO, Gustav Soderstrom. I hope that I've presented that correctly. So their top developers haven't written a single line of code since December. They're orchestrating AI instead of typing.
Yeah, and I talked about this in my solo episode, but I thought it was so good we should bring it back and get your opinion on it, Sean. So it's workflow inversion, isn't it? It's developers becoming the conductors that we've always talked about and not the builders. It's the 80% grunt work is being done by the machine, leaving the 10% for the human and 10%, review and architecture. So yeah, it's mad.
And I've explained this, I've had this conversation with you, Paul, and it's something that we're trying to do internally in Just Applications, because we have 3 SaaS applications and we are trying to do exactly this. It's not replacement, it's leverage, but leverage changes everything. We're front row witnesses now. We're using AI daily for our architecture. We're factoring with documentation and testing is a really big thing for us as well, trying to get this product out because we're trying to get it out right now. So it's productivity on steroids, but here's the contradiction. I checked software development job postings, Paul. I think I looked at, I think it was Indeed in the US, and there was a massive spike, but it wasn't AI. It was the COVID boom. Tech companies hired aggressively so we could shop online, Zoom, operate remotely. But now postings aren't collapsing, they're actually rising again. And why do you think that is?
When you told me this, I was genuinely surprised. So it doesn't fit with my narrative, like AI is killing dev jobs tomorrow narrative. So I was really intrigued, and I was like, "Tell me more, Sean. Tell me more." Yeah.
So privately developers are worried, but possibility one, enterprise adoption takes time. So we've talked about this a lot with AI, but you've got your compliance, you've got your governance, your security, your legal, the legacy systems. You don't just flip a switch and automation happens. So we actually believe that companies like Anthropic, they're hiring heavily to basically start to put a lot of work into these automations, and that's in a sense, how long would that last for? Would it, is it a year, 2 years, even less? What do you think, Paul?
Well, ultimately, the automations that people want to benefit from need building, don't they? So we're working with a company right now, and they've got, a lot of developers. And I talked to them, and they're hiring. And they've built a dedicated AI implementation team, and they've just hired 2 people into that team specifically to adopt AI. So actually, when I thought about it, I was like, I've got real customers who are doing exactly what you're describing. So have
they got SaaS systems, or
so they're a SaaS product. They ship about £4 million worth of product every single day, and they've got a full scaled up team, senior developers across it, leadership teams, everything. Like, it's a full on Scrum.
What's the language? What's the software language?
Do you know what? I don't actually know.
You don't know?
never come into the equation, because what we're doing is, that's a really good question. Development is becoming a lot more agnostic, I think, tech agnostic. I was helping another company recruit. Talk about recruitment. Yesterday morning, I was on an interview at 8 a.m. with a client acting as their fractional CTO for a hire. So they're hiring 2 developers right now, like this week, and they've just made offers to both. And what was interesting is we're working with them on a capacity of like helping their internal DevOps to really accelerate AI adoption in their dev processes. So I was kind of saying to the CEO, well, actually, we've got someone in front of us who knows, 50% of languages, but they've got the right attitude, right mindset. And I was like, yes, they might not know your core dev stack, but actually they don't need to in 2026. Like it's so different to like, I think when we both started out, you would almost pick a lane, wouldn't you? You'd go, I'll be a PHP developer, I'm going to be a .NET developer, I'm going to be, I chose a random one, but Ruby on Rails, but like I'm gonna specialize and be the best I can. And the most knowledgeable is one of the things that used to be the way that people got paid, wasn't it? Was experience and knowledge. It's all outcomes now. So at the end of the day, if you're going to use a tool like Claude to help you to develop, your software engineering experience that they all had is in the architecture, and it's in the problem solving that still exists, and it's in the review. So I believe it's not a barrier. Whereas before we'd be going, it would almost be impossible to take somebody on who doesn't know. I think it's C# that they code in, which is quite a legacy system in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I was like, there's an argument they don't need to know. And again, with any hire, you can hire somebody who says they know C#. They can still be rubbish. So it's almost like, why not give them benefit of the doubt? I can train their team and my team can train them in AI development. And I was just like, and he's got plans by the end of this year to double his software team. So yeah, it sounds so stupid of me to go, when you told me about this, Sean, in our conversation, I was like, set back and was like, oh, I go peaks and troughs in terms of negativity and positivity with AI. Like I see it as a threat and a weakness, and I see it as the biggest opportunity ever. And I think I've just babbled out two real world examples this week where we've got two software companies we're working with on an AI adoption route, and they're both recruiting heavily. And it's exactly what you're describing. I think it's what the other thing we talked about in episode 1 was the Fiverr email. Sorry, I'll wrap up in a minute. But we talked about, well, if you eradicate and eliminate all the easy, you work on the complex. And that's what you were saying as well is, so there's now within everyone's reach is to work on special projects, the important stuff, the complex stuff that's never been tackled. So I also foresee that people will work on more innovation than they've ever been able to do.
And I think looking at what you said about the CFO example, about you said you'd never done that before.
No, never.
So I think where you and I are seeing ourselves going in as consultants now into companies, some of these opportunities weren't even probably in their minds. But someone's got to put the wiring together and the automation together
to give the time and capacity to
give the time.
And this is where the human comes in. Is at the moment, this is my experience of AI. AI is this totally wrong word, but it's a servant to humanity. So you give it a task, you give it something to do, you tell it to program these automated tasks, and it will deliver. It will do it really, really well. But somebody has to give the instruction. Now that may change in the future, but right now the role of the human being is to slow down and do the deep thinking. And you actually talked about this again at the first episode of the year. You said that you did a review of 2025. And again, that was me thinking, how have you been able to do that? Because I bet you've thought for every single year of your business, I'd like to do a review of the year. And how many times have you actually ever gone through and delivered a comprehensive audit of your business at the turn of the year? Why can you do that now? Because capacity is increased, not through hiring, like directly, but through eliminating and offloading and delegating, but also because you've got the tools. That means you can do a review of a business in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, again, I think one of the traps that people fall into with AI, and I talk about this a lot with people and their guardrails, is it's perpetual. It will never stop saying, and now do you want me to do this? And so, yes, you could spend 2 weeks with AI doing a review of the year, but what people have to embrace is good enough. It's really, it would be so easy to get everything perfect and do an audit of your business and get absolutely everything accurate and thinking. What you're looking for is the trends and the weaknesses of the business over the 12 months and the opportunities going into next year. That is a fag packet conversation that you could do entirely with voice. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to.
Yeah.
You don't. I would recommend using your financial package and pulling in the numbers, but you don't need to. You can just give it almost like a counselling thing. This is my perspective. Challenge me. Ask me questions to get out of me. So, yeah, it's that was an example from an episode where it hit home with me that the reason you're able to do it, or the reason you did it, is because you had the ability to think that you could do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a real concern, listeners, as we're saying here. Major technological shifts like AI, they're not going to destroy jobs overnight. They ramp up quietly. Then 3 to 4 years later, the landscape might look differently. So the Industrial Revolution didn't eliminate blacksmiths in the first week, but of course it did eliminate them eventually. So what we're saying is that obviously, yes, we can see software jobs are going up, as Paul and I have just alluded to. How long that's going to continue, well, that's something we've just got to watch out and keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think we know the train's moving. We don't know how fast. it's the analogy, isn't it?
Good analogy.
I think the other thing to really to drill home is, there's jobs that exist today that didn't exist 10 years ago, and I think that'll be the truth. Is that whatever happens next, there will be jobs. But there'd be things we didn't even think of. I mean, when I started in software, there was no such thing as an influencer. So you can judge like whatever you want. So, but yeah, I mean, I think the competitive pressure that's dictating speed is getting really real as well, and that's what we see. We've got a meeting today, and it was a classic thing of it was booked in for next week. And they've insisted it gets pulled forward because they need to move. They know they need to move fast. And suddenly it's creating an urgency unlike anything I've ever experienced. So, and one of the biggest stories from this week, as we talk about the news, not Paul Rhodes and his business, is that Anthropic, they reported that part of its original safety first positioning, they positioned themselves as a responsible AI company. If you don't know who Anthropic are, they're the development company behind Claude, which we've mentioned a lot, which is like a coding tool. But they're adjusting their stance, and that signals competitive pressure in accelerating like risk tolerance and this AI arms rate that we spoke about. So, a company that starts out with a North Star of being the responsible AI company, that then starts to weaken its position, it has to be competitive pressure, and it has to be speed. And obviously there's other factors. So yeah, there's an AI arms race well and truly underway internationally between US and China, just domestically in the US in terms of the power houses. The majority of AI people using are US owned. And one thing that came up in a conversation the other week as well is, I remember a long time, people were talking about, especially when it comes to EU data laws and GDPR and stuff, like where's your data housed? And it's always been really important for the companies I work with that it's a UK data center. And yet, when it comes to AI, the majority of it is US hosted, and they don't give a rat's ass, to be honest. They want the productivity gain, but they don't care that they're... So we're seeing the adoption of AI factories, like infrastructure internally as well. Like people are building their own like Mac Studio infrastructure, or they're dictating where it should be housed and looking for AI infrastructure where they can promise, the geolocation of the actual servers and stuff. So, but this feels like a moment where the ideals meet market forces, doesn't it? And safety is expensive. Speed wins markets. And, is this inevitable is the thing, or is it just realism? If you slow down, someone else doesn't. So is there restraint even possible in a global race?
And Paul, exponential tech moves like compound interest, regulation moves like a committee meeting. So the real issue, Paul, isn't whether regulation exists, it's whether it can move at the same velocity. And that brings up the measurement problem, doesn't it?
Exactly. And experts are saying AI is improving so quickly that traditional benchmarking systems can't even keep track of it. So if we can't measure it properly, how on earth do you start to regulate it? So businesses can't plan confidently, and we can't forecast the impact. I mean, it is a proper like finger in the air moment, isn't it? When you're trying to predict this stuff, it's a bit like trying to measure the speed of a rocket with a speedometer built for bicycles. It's like,
yeah. So are we overestimating it? Benchmarks lag capability, but real world adoption still depends on reliability. We have to separate lab capability from actual enterprise readiness.
True, but AI first consumer hardware is now mainstream. So Samsung have launched the Galaxy, I think it's the S26. It's got deeply embedded AI features. It's in your phone, it's in your photos, it's in your daily decision making. So this is a shift, again, that you talked about earlier, from the AI as a tool to this AI as an ambient layer. This is where AI stops being optional and it becomes default.
Yeah, and once it's default, behavioural changes follow. People start relying on it without realising it. The big shift isn't just smarter chat models anymore. It's agentic AI, autonomous systems that book meetings, execute workflows, write code, and make purchasing decisions.
Yeah, and it just reminded me of, I think it's Google advert, I might get it wrong, or Samsung, but it says, if your phone knows your calendar, shouldn't it reply to you text messages? No. I don't want to tell everyone that I'm available when I say I'm busy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think once AI starts taking actions instead of giving answers, that's completely different category of disruption. I think we're in the early days of that now. And then governments are noticing. So 86 nations signed a global AI cooperation declaration this week. This tells me governments believe this is as significant as nuclear or internet governance.
Well, when Samsung embeds deeply integrated AI into the new Galaxy S26, it forces behavioural changes on a global scale. People will start relying on it for daily decisions without even realising it. So to summarise today, looking back, the last 9 months have proven that AI is no longer a back-end novelty. It's the absolute default infrastructure of our businesses, our browsers, and our global economy.
Yeah, and the companies and individuals that thrive won't be the ones who are resisting it. They'll be the ones that adapt. They move away from routine execution. They step up to work on special projects, the really complex stuff that we've spoken about, and they'll integrate, complex human insight with this massive new capability.
Perfectly synthesized, Paul. So the question we're leaving everyone with today isn't, will AI change my job? The real question is, are you on the train or are you standing on the tracks? So thank you so much for tuning into this milestone episode of Ctrl-Alt-Dev, episode 19. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn or whether you get your podcasts, and join us next week as we keep decoding how technology is fundamentally rewriting the rules of business.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.